is the Last Minute Blues Podcast with Donnie, Alex, Jeremy, and Jeff Burton.
Well, it's been a week or so since we have convened, and there's still nothing on the walls.
Yeah. Well,
still very beige in here.
I didn't. Hold on, I gotta fix my camera for everybody on YouTube. There we go. Look at that. Somebody shorter was in here.
Is it out?
Yeah, we're good. Oh. No, we're good. We're
good.
It's
the best looking one on the podcast, Alex. You should definitely make sure that thing is on.
That should be the only one that's on.
Look, guys.
I agree, man. I agree.
Look, guys, I did my fixer-upper, the one show, and then I watched it on YouTube later that night, and I'm like, that looks actually dumber than what we originally had. I'm just not going to do that anymore. So we're just going to find a way to get a set.
I didn't want to say that, but...
Oh, it looks terrible. You had this, like, little tiny jersey that's hanging above... The only one that looked good was behind Donnie because it covered up, like, the actual screen.
Because it said Stanley Cup.
Well, that's true.
I just don't know what we're going to do. We got to do. I'm almost tempted to just start getting posters and throwing this, like putting it together like it's a bedroom when we were 14.
Oh, that's it.
You know what I mean?
Electra posters, Jessica Simpson as Daisy Duke.
Dude, absolutely so. I mean, if we're going to throw it back.
I just took you into 13-year-old Alex's bedroom.
Okay, well then, for mine then, and I would assume, Jeremy, you might be comparable. Alyssa Milano would have been in there.
She was hot.
Drew Barrymore.
Yeah.
Drew Barrymore.
The Scream Drew Barrymore.
Listen, Drew Barrymore and I are the exact same age, and I have legitimately had a crush on Drew Barrymore my entire life.
Mine's Jennifer Love Hewitt.
Oh, really?
Probably since I was like 12 years old.
Her.
Jennifer Love Hewitt has always been at the top of the list.
What does she do now?
She's on a couple of different television shows.
Oh, okay, and then and I don't mean that in a nigger way, even though it sounded that way. I just don't know.
She was out of the spotlight for a while, I think, but then she got back, which was great for Alex, you know? He was married at that time. I love my wife more than anything.
See, who cares about the walls? It's the content.
Yeah,
it's the content.
Content is what makes this show great.
We are making content from beige walls. Well, we've got a lot to talk about with the Blues and otherwise, but I wanted to start this real quick. So, Alex, you're doing the play-by-play tonight?
Yeah, I am. So, Curbs' daughter, I know, yikes, guys, ladies and gentlemen, watch out. Curbs' daughter's senior night for her volleyball match is this evening. And he wanted to be there, and it's like, yeah, I don't blame you for not wanting to miss that. And so he called me up, and he's like, hey, you're doing play-by-play. And I'm like, okay, because I did play-by-play back in 2019 when Curbs earned the Jack Buck Award, I think it was. And that was like my first play-by-play since Lindenwood, and that was nerve-wracking. This one's not as nerve-wracking. I haven't, like, studied for 72 hours like I did for that one. But when he called, it was still really cool. So
hey, we've put Donnie on the spot and had him do a fake in and out of commercial like he does on 105.7 The Point. Let's hear it. Let me hear some play-by-play. I wish I could do
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to act this out.
Look,
He's going in the corner.
That's going to screw me up. Don't act that one. All right, hold on. Let's see if I can
If anybody's playing like that, I don't think that they should still be here.
Yeah. Is this how Eli plays? Eli's got more skill than that. I know he does.
Yeah. All right, so let's do.
All right, here we go.
I'll set you up here. We're back to Blues hockey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back inside Enterprise Center. It is a 3-1 Blues lead going into the third period. Face off to the right of Elvis Merzlikins. Robert Thomas wins it. Up to the blue line to Philip Broberg. He takes a shot, banks off the goaltender. Jake Neighbors' deflection. It's a goal!
I knew it. I knew it was coming. Jake's looked great all night.
Hey, Broberg's not playing, but no, I'm joking.
Yeah, Broberg's not in, so sorry, ladies and gentlemen. The numbers probably aren't
Dude,
right.
that's so awesome.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's always... So when I started at Lindenwood, play-by-play was my ultimate goal. That's why JR, who originally got me into this business, hooked me up with Curbs, got me my booth internship, which led to KMOX, which essentially led me to here at 101. But when I started, it was all about play-by-play. And then, as all of us know, your career evolves as you go. And play-by-play just felt, not that it didn't feel attainable, but it was just really difficult to do when you were settled in a spot where you were getting on airtime at KMOX in St. Louis doing pre- and post-game for Cardinals, and the idea of going to East Virginia and be like, hey, you're going to go make $13,000 a year to go do play-by-play in the East Coast Hockey League. Like, it was a dream, but it was like, man, I'm doing pre- and post-game for the Cardinals and the Blues right now. Mm-hmm. And then I got to start hosting shows, and so it was kind of always put in the back burner of like, you know what, I'll get back to play-by-play at some point. And when Curbs asked me, it's like, okay, that kind of reignited that fire. So now I just, any chance I get, I try and capitalize
I just got a text from Curbs that says, please tell Alex not to get too comfortable in that chair.
Well, good news for him is I won't use his chair. He's got a specific chair, so I'll use a different one.
Guys, I've been dying to ask you this. This does not have to do with the Blues for a week since I saw it happen. And this is kind of like a weird thing, and we'll get into the Blues in just a second, and cuts have been made and things like that. What in the hell was going on in that Toronto game when William Nylander got hurt? Mm-hmm. And like some guy was trying to propel. Do you know what I'm talking about? Okay, so is something when Nylander got hurt, there was a Leaf player behind him that was trying to essentially use Nylander to propel himself past him. And then Nylander ended up getting tripped and hurt. And I just remember watching this going, this feels like a weirdo Mighty Ducks move and not like something that would be in an NHL game. And then on top of that, the worst case scenario happens when your $10, $9, $11 million player gets banged up on it. And then,
I'm watching it now. Yeah. So,
you see what
I think it's Nick Robertson.
Yes.
He shoves him with his stick to push him forward, and Nylander falls down.
Yeah, and he felt hard. He felt like he got hurt.
Through somebody's leg. Well, I'll just tinfoil it for you guys. Nick Robertson wants some playing time in the top six.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, here we go.
I just saw that.
That's weird.
Just crazy, too. And then any of these sort of injuries that we have seen, Drew Doherty there in Los Angeles, that just sucks.
Patrick Laine.
Patrick Laine. And that thing was that. And then, Laine, whatever, we have our comes and goes with him. But I was kind of rooting for him on a personal level in Montreal. And then when you see how the team responds to his injury, then you kind of see that the guy was, making a little name for himself, making himself a little room in that locker room. And I like to see that, man. Sometimes, we've talked about it a zillion times. Sometimes these guys just mature later than others, man. Some of it takes a little while for them to come in their own. I would love to see Patrick Laine do well. And, I'd like to see the Canadians do well.
Sometimes it's about getting the right coach. And I think Marty St. Louis is one of those coaches for younger players or guys that need a fresh new stance on hockey. Laine felt like the perfect match for Marty St. Louis. So I was disappointed, too, with that one because he was one where it felt like, okay, this might be the exit for Montreal to start winning and stop this kind of up and down of we're good for a couple of months and then fall apart. Let's all not forget what Laine was his first couple of years in Winnipeg. Dude was one of the best goal scorers. We were talking about how Toronto may have missed on Patrick Laine because they have obviously took Austin Matthews. Now, they're not asking that anymore, but we were talking about Patrick Laine being the best from that draft class, and now you kind of look at what his career has gone through, which, you can't blame him. With Winnipeg, and then you go to Columbus, and Columbus was kind of an ish show for the longest time, and then now you finally get to Montreal, and now you can actually potentially start winning with them.
Also, all right, answer me this, and then we're going to talk about the Blues. Why would Cam Neely say that yesterday in that press conference, talking about Jeremy Swayman and the 64.
Cam Neely.
But that. But seriously though, guys, that's probably not a helpful thing for him to do, is it? Really?
No, it's not. And for those who are unfamiliar with what he said, they have a goaltender, Jeremy Swayman, who is not in camp yet, looking for a contract, and they have been at an impasse. Pierre LeBrun of the Athletic said Swayman might want as much as $10 million a year, kind of to cash in.
Can you blame him?
Yeah, so yesterday, Cam Neely with the Boston Bruins comes out and says, well, I think he has 64 million reasons that he should be here. Of course, that's the 8x8 contract that it seemed like when he said that they've probably offered him and he's turned down. Mm-hmm. But Louis Gross, Swayman's agent, comes out and says, look, I don't normally do this, but I'm going to come out and talk here for a second that we didn't get to the $64 million threshold, so I don't know what they're talking about in Boston.
My dad used to tell me when I was in high school, he's like, don't quit a job unless you've got another job to go to.
Yeah.
He's like, you can't, because then you're not going to have a job. Then you're going to be looking and then you're not going to know what to do.
And I'm not giving you money.
The Boston Bruins got rid of Linus Ullmark because they were confident they could get Jeremy Swayman done.
That's the part I don't understand.
Without signing Jeremy Swayman.
Get Swayman done before you trade Ullmark.
Right. Wouldn't you at least start the negotiations and make sure, okay, he's on the 50-yard line, we're on the 30-yard line, we'll match this at some point. They were not even talking to each other. We'll trade Linus Ullmark because Swayman's our guy. Guess what Jeremy Swayman does now? Well, you need a goaltender. I want $10 million. It was just weird business by the Boston Bruins.
Does Boston have any leverage here?
Well, no, not really. I mean, they're going to have to get him in camp, and it looks like he's standing his ground. So, these things always come together right before the start of the season, so I'm sure. But, yeah, he's going to get paid. But now the two sides seem pretty bitter about what's going on.
Well, no, your leverage if you're Boston is like, God, I hope Jonas Corposalo's good. But I don't know how much leverage that is.
And I thought I read something where he had one of the lowest save percentages of goaltenders with a certain amount of games last year. Like, he was Swiss cheese.
He was Ottawa, wasn't he?
Yeah, and they got too good of a team to be running him out there. They've got to get this done, and they will. They'll have to pay him. It's just pro sports.
Yep.
Boy, I love it.
I'm expecting like a 2-year bridge contract for him, and then Swayman's like, "Yeah, I'm walking at the end of this."
Oh, if that happens, then the writing is on the wall.
Yeah.
He's freaking gone.
Yeah, he's done.
This is the best time of the year, though, guys. And I'm not a super big NBA guy, but they're getting going. NHL getting started. Football is happening. The baseball playoffs, which honestly, this is so weird. And this is the first time in my life that today I was driving in, listening to 101, and they were talking about the baseball playoffs starting today. And I was like, oh, wow, that starts today.
I forgot about that.
Which is so weird, but it's just the best part of the year where there's all of these great sports going on. So the Blues have made some cuts. JR, you did an article yesterday in The Athletic, which I read, which goes through all of the lines, as you kind of see them so far, and there's been players already moved down to Springfield option and things like that. So, guys, I guess the first thing that people started tweeting at me about in the last couple of days was Dalibor Dvorsky not making the team. But, guys, I kind of thought that when we were heading in to, the rookie camps and all of those things, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but I felt as though that the deck was sort of stacked against Dvorsky making the team because it just seemed like there was so much already established NHL depth that he was just going to really have to come in and knock people's socks off the entire time for him to make the team. Like, it just seemed like he was an outsider looking in, kind of even when this all started.
Yeah, Danny, I think you can look at 2 or 3 things. Number 1 is the depth that Doug Armstrong brought in. Number 2, he wants to be competitive. So when you do the offer sheet for Broberg and Holloway, and you go, okay, wow, this team could be a playoff team, that kind of gave me some doubt that Dvorsky would be here. But I'll go back even further. The day that Doug Armstrong said that we are not going to fail this guy, like failing, especially when he said that when he looks back, he probably feels that they should not have kept Jake Neighbors, then sent him down, then brought him back up. They don't want to do the same thing with Dvorsky. So they don't want to keep him here, send him down, bring him back up. Just let him go down. And Drew Bannister said yesterday, this is a guy who lived with a billet family, the past year. So, let him go learn the professional life, have a teammate that he rooms with, so on and so forth. And then the other thing is you look at the play, and this is to take nothing away from Dvorsky. I've been sticking up for him when some of the national people say that, he doesn't look as good as he could be at this point. And I say that I think he's going to be a great player. I mean, his puck possession skills, his shot, the power play, things like that. But as Drew Bannister said a couple days ago, Alex, he said that the play away from the puck, he needs to support his teammates, short passes, be there for this guy, those types of things. The defensive end, those are things that he needs to get better at, and they're not going to happen on a team that wants to hit the ground running, win October 8th in Seattle, and make the playoffs. They need to give him some time.
You don't use the word cerebral to describe a player when he has the puck and sit there and be like, well, yeah, he's not where we thought he was. We need to send him to the minors. Like, that's what Bannister described Dalibor Dvorsky as. He's cerebral when he has the puck. 19 years old. I think, and I fell into this, when you saw what happened with Robert Thomas the year that the Blues won the Cup, he's coming out of juniors and he plays in the NHL and then he just kind of continues to develop. And you're thinking, okay, well, if you're a top 10 pick, you don't need to go into the minors. You can be at the NHL level. The difference was Robert Thomas spent 5 seasons in junior hockey or 4 seasons in junior hockey before he went pro. So he was used to North American hockey for the longest time. Dalibor Dvorsky's 19 years old, and this was the first year last year of playing in North American hockey where he was up playing in juniors hockey. So, he still has a lot to figure out at the pro hockey level, which is why you send him down to the minors. And I'm with JR. When he has the puck, he looks awesome. It's just away from the puck, which almost every single player has to figure out how to do. And I thought Doug Armstrong kind of laid the blueprint of what was going to happen when he said, we're not going to ruin this guy. You're a top 10 pick. He's got to be a second-line center of the future for us with the hopes of maybe something more. And you don't you don't take a chance of ruining that just to push him onto this roster. That's why they went out and brought in all of these NHL guys this offseason, and Joseph and Texier and Holloway, so you didn't have to force Dalibor Dvorsky or a Jimmy Snuggerud if he would have went pro into the NHL level.
So if you're Dvorsky, how do you frame this in your mind? Because it's not a negative. Like, some people look at it as a negative that he didn't make the team. I don't view it that
I
way.
would have viewed it a negative if he would have had to go back to juniors hockey.
Well,
That's where I would have viewed it negative. But he didn't, and so I view that as a positive. Like, they want him to work with Steve Konowalchuk in the American Hockey League and play in every scenario.
Yeah, since he's eligible to go to the American Hockey League, that's a great avenue for the Blues to use. Like Alex said, if they would have said, hey, buddy, we're going to send you back to junior, what? I can't play in the American Hockey League at least? So that would have been a negative too. I'll go back to what I was saying a minute ago is, to me, it's not as big of a deal to send him to the American Hockey League right now and just say, hey, listen, we're not quite there yet, but go work on X, Y, Z, and we'll get there. And if he comes up in 2-3 months or whenever, that's progress to me. The opposite would be, what if they kept him right now? He plays 20 games. He's got 2 points. He's out of position. He's not helping out. Guys around him, veterans who want to be in the playoffs, are saying, what are we doing here? Like, this isn't the guy. This guy is not ready. Then they send him back to the minors in a month or two after he's played those 20 games. Then you look at things differently. That's what Doug Armstrong's trying to avoid. That's why he's in Springfield right now.
And I also, it might just be the conspiracy theory that I put together with all of this, but you're going to have injuries at some point. So you're going to have somebody come up from the minor leagues, and then that's the internal competition of a Dvorsky, a Zach Dean, maybe somebody else. But more importantly, if the Blues aren't where they want to be early on and you're not getting the offense from Booch at the center spot and you're thinking, we might need to move this guy back over to the wing so we can get more offense and maybe get the best out of our top six, well, then that's why you've got the seasoning of Dalibor Dvorsky, because if he's at the NHL level and he's underperforming like JR mentioned and he looks out of place and you need a little bit of a spark, you don't want to bring a guy up who's struggling on the fourth line and put him into a second line spot. You go to the AHL and you get a guy who's dominating as a top centerman, if he is, and then you bring him up. It's what they did with Perunovic. Now, it didn't work with Perunovic that first season, but Bannister to this day still says that Perunovic was one of the best AHL guys he saw when he coached him, and it was like, 20-something games, and they brought him up, and they played him in the NHL the rest of the season.
I'm going to bounce around a lot because that's just how my brain works.
Bounce.
I think one of the most interesting parts about the article yesterday, JR, came at the very, very end. And I'm sitting at my kitchen
showing you that he read the whole thing.
Yeah. It's a little bit of a show-off move for sure.
When I did book reports. Like, the most interesting part of the book was on page 79 because I read the entire book.
No, but at the very end, like in the last 2 sentences.
Save the best for last.
It is, it's talking about, and I guess that this is a reality. This is so crazy how I get so close to these players, like I know them. But it just... realistically, the Scott Perunovic era in St. Louis could be coming to an end.
Well, yeah.
And again, you didn't say that specifically. You said that he could be sort of an odd man out.
Yeah, I think it's a situation like this is, obviously you run out of chances at some point. He hasn't been overly impressive in camp, and they have a numbers situation. Like, if he was a guy who they felt could be an automatic top 6 guy this summer, they thought he could be that to start this season, they might not go out and get P.O. Joseph and Ryan Suter. Granted, they knew that Torrey Krug was banged up, but I think that they went out and they got that depth because they're still not sure on Scott Perunovic, right? So he comes into camp and just plays okay, but now they got a roster situation. Alex, we can talk about the breakdown here. Usually go 14 forwards, 7 defensemen. That's typical for roster construction. You can go 13 forwards and 8 defensemen.
Last year they did that.
The Blues did that last year, I believe, coming out of camp. And so they could do that and then keep both P.O. Joseph and Scott Perunovic, and then Tyler Tucker's probably the odd guy out. He goes to Springfield. However, the Blues got a situation with Brandon Saad, who's not going to be probably playing in that first road trip because his wife is expecting. So she could have the baby tomorrow and then he plays, but we don't know that yet. So it looks like they could be minus Saad, and also Sundqvist, even though he's progressing well and looks like he'll be ready soon, he may not be ready for the opener either. So you might have to carry 14 forwards to have a Saad on the roster, yet fill in for him in Seattle, and so they might have to keep 7 defensemen. So if that means that if they're going to keep P.O. Joseph as that 7th defenseman, maybe Scott Perunovic is going to have to go through waivers to get to Springfield. I think they still want to have him. I still think, even though he hasn't played great in the preseason, that they would love to have him in their depth and potentially come up from Springfield, play in a pinch. Maybe he figures it out in Springfield, comes up and starts to become the player that you think. But, yeah, as you look at it today, depending on whether they keep 7 or 8 defensemen, we might not see Scott Prunivich on this opening night roster.
So, correct me. Can Saad go on the bereavement list if the season starts? I think
that's probably the case,
and then you fill a roster spot until he returns, and then you make that decision.
Yeah, I think you could do that and then keep 13 forwards, keep your 8 defensemen, keep Prunivich. But then the other part of this, guys, is there's a strategy to the waivers. So
absolutely,
if you want to try to ensure that Scott Prunivich doesn't get picked up, put him through waivers with this massive number of people that are going to be put on waivers in the next couple days to get down to the 23-man roster. Because if a team, Islanders, whoever, go to pick up Scott Prunivich, they have to keep him on the NHL roster. They can't take him off of waivers and then put him in the minors. The whole reason for this is so that guys stay in the NHL. So it's a situation where, depending on what the Blues do, 13, 14 forwards, 7, 8 defensemen, we'll see what happens with Prunivich.
Don't you see, guys, if he were put on waivers, somebody would pick him up, right?
I have to imagine yes, because of what the upside looks like.
Your facial expression looks a lot more doubtful than I thought it would.
I mean, if I'm a team and I know I have to keep this guy on my NHL roster, is he playing over any of my other 6 defensemen that I have?
Is he better than what you got?
But that's the thing, and that's what we're talking about here, is that there's 31 other teams who are probably healthy, all of them, which isn't going to be the case in 2 months, 3 months. So if the Blues put him on waivers in 3 months, this team's got 3 guys banged up. They pick them up. But right now, everybody's healthy. Every team is going, who are we going to cut? We got all these guys. We can't cut this guy. Prunivich is available. Well, I don't know. He didn't make their team, and we're loaded. We can't. So he might not, if you push him through at the start of the season.
Because there could be a team that sits there and says, hey, look at Vince Dunn. Look at the Jake Wallman in Detroit.
Yeah.
This might be something that we could capitalize on. But you also have to be a team, and if you're looking at your roster and saying, okay, well, you got to be competitive early on in the NHL. We know how this works. You potentially miss out on a playoff spot if you struggle in November or October. Do you want to put that on the roster? Because Scott Prunivich hasn't had a whole lot of, he's played, but there's not a whole lot of games under his belt to where it's that guy can play 5-on-5 and play 18 minutes for us. You kind of have to pick and choose, because if Prunivich is making this roster, correct me if I'm wrong here, but they're going to be looking at this as kind of like our power play specialist. This is going to be a guy who can do the power play. Right. Sure, he's going to play minutes, but I don't know if you're going to see 18, 19 minutes from Scott Prunivich when you've got Suter and Kessel and Broberg and Parayko and Leddy and Falk. So I just – maybe a team surprises the hell out of you. Heck, maybe a team says, look, we need to trade for him now because maybe the Blues aren't going to put him on waivers. It would surprise me if a team says, let's get him and keep him on our NHL roster now, when everybody has basically put together their 23-man roster to start the season.
That makes sense. Guys, talk to me about Buchnevich and this center transition and how you're feeling about it.
Well, I think the Blues looked at the overall picture, the team winning percentage with Buchnevich at center, and I don't have the numbers in front of me. To be honest, you'd almost have to go through every lineup and see when he played center. And did he move to right wing during the game? And did they win that game? Did they tie it? But the Blues have come up with a number, which I trust them, of 600 winning percentage, points percentage, with Buchnevich at center. So that's why they're doing this. And so, they felt like he was starting to get the hang of things towards the end of last year. I think, he's been working. We've seen him in practice with Steve Ott, Robert Thomas on faceoffs. So their goal is to get him up to par. But you'll notice that Schenn is playing on his left wing. So that's a guy who can share the center responsibilities. And even in practice, you'll see Schenn take a rotation at center and then Buchnevich. They kind of go back and forth. Buchnevich, if he's struggling the face-off, now Schenn, even though he's left wing, he can take the face-off. So, I think they're going to do everything they can to make it work. I did my quote-unquote bold predictions the other day, and I'm like, Buchnevich will be back at the wing in November, just because, I don't know, I'm still a little bit skeptical, Alex, on that situation.
I mean, I've said it a lot, probably to the point people are annoyed with it. I think your team is better off having Pavel Buchnevich at the wing spot on your top line, because that creates more depth. And I know down the middle may not look good to people, but I'm just banking on a Braden Schenn bounce-back season. I think last year was just a lot more away from hockey than it was just his hockey game. I get it. They believe, and they have the numbers that show that the team is better with Buch at center. And look, when you're a centerman, your responsibility, of course, is to drive offense, but it's also to be the first one back defensively. And we all know Buch is one of the most underrated defensive players in the game today. but it doesn't take away from a guy who could be a 35-goal scorer for you and make Robert Thomas a 100-point player, to where can Shen put up 60 points for you at the center position if you put the wings? I guess that's the question you're asking. But if you're going to do this, which I understand, you're experimenting, it's preseason. Like, I think tonight and Thursday you're going to get a really good idea of what an opening night roster is going to look like. But if you're going to experiment where one face-off Shen takes it, one face-off Booch takes it, why not just keep Booch on the wing? Because then you can get the best of both worlds in terms of Shen playing the center spot. You can have a second line that can be competitive. Like Shen and Kyrou last season as a duo, I think they were like 58% Corsi rating when they were playing together. And Pavel Buchnevich, Robert Thomas, and Jake Neighbors were one of your best offensive lines in terms of expected goals last season. So that's where I stand on it, but I understand they have to find something. It's kind of a temporary placeholder until Dalibor Dvorsky is ready. And I don't want Holloway playing there. I don't want Texier playing there. You got your third and fourth lines down, and nobody else is ready. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and just quickly, give Booch credit. He said a couple weeks ago, whatever they want me to do, I'll do. If I need to learn center, I'll learn center. The one thing, though, I sat down with him for 30 minutes, and he stuck out to me when he said this, guys, is he said, when I'm playing wing, I just got a feel for when I can jump, when I can pounce, when I can move, when I can, when I need to get back. And when I'm playing center, should I?
You're
and
hesitant.
It's just like when you're hesitant and when you're like that, and maybe that comes in due time and he's a Hall of Fame center, who knows? But, if you're able to follow your instincts and your gut and make plays, that's when you're at your best in hockey, and he's able to do that on the wing.
I always go back to that first season of Booch. And I understand he was used as a second-line winger because you had Perron and O'Reilly and all those guys. But I always go back to it and looked at that and say, man, that guy, he doesn't get injured or have a suspension. I think you could be talking 40 goals for Booch that season. And then, of course, throughout the years, it was a couple of injuries that were just nagging him. That's the other thing with the center spot. Center spot takes a toll on your body because you're doing everything. And he's one of those guys that you look at. Like, I don't think there's not a whole lot of guys on this roster that if you pluck out and you say, oh, man, this team is screwed. Like, there's a couple of guys, but Booch is one of those guys because your penalty kill takes a massive blow. 5-on-5 defensively takes a massive blow. So it's just one of those things. It's risk versus reward, what you're trying to accomplish.
Okay. I don't want to bring the room down, but I think I'm about to.
Is this going to be non-hockey?
No. So one of the things over the course of the last few times in which that we have gotten together and talked, I have been very, I think, bullish on how good I think the Blues can be and how I really am, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, this is a playoff team. Everybody's sleeping. This is a playoff team.
Hell yeah.
That said, the more that we talk, and the more that we break down some of these big positions, to me, guys, I just hear the word if a lot. Like if Booch does this, if we get, and it just seems, I think I'm starting to realize, good team, but we need a lot of good things to go our way to take that next step up. Is that a fair thing to say?
I think so. Isn't that the definition of a retool?
Yeah, God, here we are again.
JR's got a smile on his face.
I'm laughing because
you've been saying this for like a month.
The Screaming Eagle is taken. The Batman is taken. What do we name the Donnie Fandango roller coaster this season? Of guys, I'm in on this team.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I'm still in.
That's a good idea.
I'm still in. It's just, I think, more of the reality of slow it down there, Fandango.
Yeah, no, you're right.
We're just not quite there yet.
No, you're right.
Good team. It's not that I don't think they're going to be good or I don't mean anything like that. I think it just starts to come up with the ifs.
Well, and I think a lot of that is because if you look at this roster over the last couple of years, you've seen the best and you've seen the worst of players like Binnington, Parayko, Robert Thomas, Jordan Kyrou, Pavel Buchnevich. So, there are a lot of ifs. We've only seen one season of Jake Neighbors where he scored 27 goals. You've seen some of these other guys but play for other teams. They do just feel like a team, if this happens, probably because you just haven't seen any consistency in terms of back-to-back seasons where they've put it together. If this season you get a lot like last year with Binnington and Parayko and Thomas and Kyrou and Booch and Jake Neighbors, then I think you start to enter the territory of okay, these guys are expected to do this every single season. Then let's add on to it.
Ladies and gentlemen, put your seatbelts on. You're about to ride the Fandango Ramo. Fandango Ramo.
All right, so I know that we've got to get cooking here real quick, but I wanted to ask one thing before we jumped, and that was Zach Bolduc. You have him with Brandon Saad theoretically out on maternity leave. You've got him up there on that second line. And he has been somebody that, I know that you guys have been kind of high on over the course of the last month or so. Tell me why. Tell me why Blues fans should be excited about seeing Zach Bolduc not only on the team, but in that top 6 role, man. That's big stuff.
I just think he looks the part right now. Like, he really does. And he knew the opportunity that might be there this offseason. I think he put in the work, and he came in. And, Donnie, I know you can't get caught up in how a guy looks, but he walks in the rink, and he looks like a player. And he's been looking that way on the ice for several weeks, months now. You look at the prospect camp, and you look at training camp. And I think he's got a skill set that this team doesn't necessarily have with a lot of the guys that are here now. I think Dvorsky, Snuggerud, these guys are going to bring some different elements. But what Zach Bolduc has right now is he's got the hands, he's got the shot. Obviously, these young kids come in and they don't use it as much as they should. But I think he's getting the message, and he's going to use it. So, you can talk about, okay, we're going to put Saad on the second line, or we're going to put Shen on the second line. Yeah, you know what you're going to get in terms of what they've done over the years, and a lot of it can be good. But if you put a Bolduc in there, hey, let him fly. Let him get out there and show you. This team needs something like that.
Yeah.
He can play that way. Now, listen, it's probably not going to be consistent throughout the year. Those are the growing pains. Might need some help defensively, but he's going to score you some goals. He's going to put up some points. Looks really good in camp. I think he's deserving of the spot. And if Saad is out for those first couple games, it's a great opportunity for Bolduc to go in there and show what he can do.
Yeah, why not take the shot and let him audition for it? I mean, let him play in that spot. He's got some experience already there. I think the main part with it is he's got the shot, and that's what they need more of. Last season, it felt like every single time we were talking about, they just don't have anybody who's finishing.
Especially on the power play.
Yeah,
right?
Neighbors was finishing at 5-on-5 in front of the net, but Kyrou was snake-bitten. You didn't get really the goal production from Booch until the end of the season. You needed somebody who had that shot, and JR's right. The other thing is he's got the one-timer. If Bolduc plays in your top 6, I would almost anticipate him to play on your first power play unit because he's got a one-timer. Now, I don't know who falls out of that. Maybe that's getting a little too far out over my skis, but if you've got a one-time shot, that's something that power play lacked miserably last year because they just anticipated it was pass, it was pass, it was pass. They've got more of a shot mentality, and I think a lot of that is because of Bolduc and Bannister basically telling them, shoot the puck every chance you get. Start to get selfish on the ice. That game, I think it was Saturday. It was either Saturday or the previous one that they had played, but he had ended it with 6 shots on goal. I'll take more of that if you're going to be in my top 6.
See, and then the roller coaster.
There it is. The Fandango's going back uphill.
It's going back up again. But you know what? And I smile while Alex was talking because we're a week away.
Yeah.
Like, we're a week away from
Yeah,
games that matter. That friggin' kicks so much ass.
And then a week away from 9 o'clock puck drop and 9:30 puck
With
drop.
3 kids this
with
year.
3 kids at home. Hey, good thing
Newborn.
the youngest is sleeping until 5.
Hey, but you're doing the play-by-play tonight.
That's true.
I was thinking about this. Like, trying to have a press pass and to watch the game with you guys at the stadium is the complete wrong call. It's the wrong call.
Man.
Let me tell you why.
Wow.
No. I love you guys. It's not because you guys aren't great company.
Oh, it's because
what would I rather be doing? Up there interrupting you guys while you're legitimately trying to work, or in a seat shoving nachos down my face.
Yeah.
That sounds like a lot more fun.
The only work JR and I do is see who can eat the most peanut M&Ms by the end of the night, which I usually win.
No beer in the press box either, Donnie.
Yeah, well,
so
and
that's
you
another
can't
reason to stay home.
flip off the team in the press box, you know?
That again, I go back to the first time that I was up there sitting next to Alex during a Blues Wild playoff
He was
game.
so into it.
I was so into it, and it was so hard to just stay seated. It was just, and then also too, like just seeing Doug Armstrong walking around, like, hey, what's going on, Captain Intimidation? Well, great. All right. So
Johnny
anyway,
walked in the bathroom and Army walked in. He's like, yeah, I'm not going to go.
I'll hold. I'll come back.
I'll hold.
I'll come back. All right, guys. So we are a week away from Blues hockey. Thank you guys always for listening to the podcast. We didn't get to those emails, but we've got more emails that we'll get to in the next podcast. LMBP at 1057thepoint.com. Thank you as always for listening. For Alex Ferrario, Jeremy Rutherford, our homeboy Jeff Burton, Donnie Fandango for the Last Minute Blues podcast. As always, let's go Blues.
The Last Minute Blues podcast. Hear more at 1057thepoint.com.